Formula One has really heated up this year, and everyone's talking about the Danish rider Verstappen, the British rider Hamilton, the Finnish rider Bottas, and the Mexican rider Perez. Here's everything you need to know about the Mexican GP FP1. Physics. Aerodynamics is one of several keys to winning in the races. The cars are built to ensure lightweight and high speeds. The current champion of the fastest track speed ever was in 2016 Mexican Grand Prix by Valtteri Bottas. So you can see why this year's Mexican Grand Prix has people on edge. This isn't the fastest time, however. Partnered with Honda, Alan van der Merwe aimed for a speed of 400 kilometers per hour. This requires ideal conditions, low friction, driver weight, and good weather conditions. Unofficial reports say that they reached 413 kilometers per hour. They didn't get the official stamp of approval due to the numerous amounts of testing. They did, however, get an official stamp of 397 kilometers per hour, meaning it would take them approximately 2 hours to drive from Paris to Berlin or 10 hours to travel from Washington, D.C. to Seattle. There's also something called drag, which is the lack of air molecules behind a driver, which would make your vehicle go faster because of it. Yes, air molecules and air resistance is finally factored in at these high speeds. Now imagine being the driver in that situation. Your whole vehicle is designed to be lightweight and aerodynamic, and an engine that is worthy of the gods. The technology. The engine's a vital part, with Mercedes touting an exceptional engine. One obvious difference between these racer engines is that they have a separate space for their spark plug, which releases a concentrated flamethrower in the engine that ignites the rest of the fuel. Power and efficiency is extremely important here. The Mercedes engine, known as the GH50, pushed fuel efficiency past 50% compared to the 35% of older cars. This releases the stored potential of the fuel into power instead of being wasted as heat. The revving can reach 15,000 rotations per minute. I wonder why they can reach 60 miles per hour in roughly 2.6 seconds. With this amount of unbridled technological power at the engineer's fingertips, it's only right that engines are regulated by the F1 to ensure there are no disastrous events that occur. Which leads us to the driver. The driver is key, risking their life on every race. They are heavily protected in a metal frame in case of a crash. Crashes can be devastating, not to mention the drivers are usually in very close proximity, which means crashes can result in a cascade effect due to the lack of time allowed for reacting at those high speeds. Thankfully, the drivers are encased in a metal frame and strapped in for good measure. That doesn't mean the force of the impact won't play havoc on their insides. The driver must also make extremely tight turns that make the most sense in the moment and resist the effect that the car has on their body. That's the information on the Formula One races. Now let's dive into why the 2021 Mexican GP FP1 result was momentous. What exactly happened in the highlights? Here we'll cover the three practices, the qualifiers, and the race. Ones to watch by the first practice. Bottas and Hamilton are both working with Mercedes, whilst Verstappen and Perez are with Honda vehicles. We usually watch a practice round before all bets are off. Initially, Bottas comes out of the gate flying with his world-renowned speed. You can start to see just how important those thousandths of a second are. In the practice match, Perez span out of a corner, which turned into a crash as the rear of his car hit the barriers. He was soon joined by fellow competitor Charles Leclerc, but as they get back onto the track, Perez still manages to come fourth place, whilst the rider who crashed with him finished 8th, both with rear wing damages. Verstappen and Perez both excel in their overall lap time, setting the stage for a riveting competition. Bottas comes first, beating the track in just 1 minute, 18 seconds, and 341 milliseconds, just 76 milliseconds faster than Hamilton, who cut the grass during the race. Verstappen was close behind at 123 milliseconds and Perez at 269 milliseconds. The longest time taken to cross the finish line was at 1 second and 517 milliseconds, which just goes to show the peak performances on show. Gearbox malfunction, practice 2. The dust was claimed to cause the crash, so we're in for an excellent practice this time. Bottas set a record on this exact track at a whopping 372.5 kilometers per hour, and he flourishes in this race by braking a little late at the end of a long straight for comfort, showing off to the crowd why he's one of the fastest. We saw Sebastian Vettel for Aston Martin pull into the wrong pit box, stating, "Sorry, I wasn't looking. Jamie's looking so good today." Perhaps it was that, "Look how handsome he is," which goes to show show just how wholesome the races can be. George Russell saw his gearbox malfunction as he radios in, "Can I change gear? Let me know ASAP." The terror in his voice as he approaches a turn. Unfortunately, he was unable to change gears whilst the Canadian stopped at the barriers. This time Verstappen beats the track in a whopping 1 minute, 17 seconds, and 301 milliseconds, with Bottas a whole 424 milliseconds behind. The other competitions are more than half a second behind. Are you serious? Practice 3. Lewis Hamilton had a huge lockup at turn 1, and it's starting to become a treacherous turn as we've seen previous competitors throughout the weekend lock up in the same way and cut the grass. We saw hilarious communication with the silver arrows as the drivers told he's more than 6 seconds behind. His remark is essentially, "Are you serious?" Charles Leclerc is seen again spinning, but he remains in control. No additional crashes today. This time Perez takes the lead at 1 minute, 17 seconds, and 24 milliseconds, which is the best lap we've seen so far. Verstappen on his tail at 193 milliseconds, and the other competitors more than half a second behind that. The unbelievably dumb idiots in the qualifiers. Russell's gearbox is still playing up, so he takes the penalties, and the aggression between the riders heats up as the practice rounds are over. In the qualifiers, the first 20 minutes, Q1, sees all 20 cars on set, and the slowest laps for 5 riders are eliminated. The next 15 minutes, Q2, sees the 15 remaining cars do the same, and the eliminations are repeated. Another 5 leave the grid. Finally, the last 10 minutes see riders fight for the first place position. Any rider that's outside of 7% of this time is disqualified to ensure only the worthy cars make it into the final race. Lance Stroll was okay after suffering a major crash on his final lap. He went wide and tried to fight the spin out of the entire way, but the crash resulted in his Aston Martin suffering extreme damage and losing a wheel. Competition really heats up for the first qualifier as riders exchange positions up until the last minute. Giovinazzi crashes during the second qualifier and is taken out, but it's the third qualifier that sees Verstappen set a 1 minute, 16 seconds, and 225 millisecond placement, which is the fastest we've seen yet. But Bottas comes out in a later lap, pushing that 1 minute, 15 second mark with 875 milliseconds, followed closely by Hamilton at 145 milliseconds behind, and third place is Verstappen at 350 milliseconds behind the pole. Perez ruined his final lap by crossing the green, believed to be caused by Yuki, and Verstappen was seen to intermingle between these two, shouting, "Unbelievable. Such a dumb idiot." Pole replaced by a Mexican podium. Ricardo locks up and makes contact with Bottas, sending the pole winner spinning into disaster. Ocon makes contact with Tsunoda, resulting in plastic, metal, and dreams flying everywhere. Verstappen is leading the entire pack and even taunts his riders by taking the serpentine maneuvers on the straight, which prevents the riders behind him from getting ahead purely based on horsepower. Ricardo is still on the road and forces the Silver Arrow to take a huge detour. By lap 10, Bottas is 18th place and 30 seconds behind Verstappen. There are 71 laps in total, and the devastation has already been caused. Perez and Hamilton stop for the first pit stop at lap 30, and they're back out within seconds. Verstappen takes his pit stop on lap 34 and almost runs over the front jackman. Perez goes for another pit stop at 41 laps in, and the pit stop crews are to be absolutely commended. Bottas at this point has made huge strides, coming in at 11th place at approximately 2.5 seconds behind the lead. At lap 60, Hamilton is screaming at Norris to get out of the way as he can't get past him. At lap 70, Bottas goes in for a final pit stop to get the highest speed, but Verstappen leads the entire way and never loses his first place. Hamilton came in at 16.55 seconds behind him. Perez came in at 17.752 seconds behind Verstappen. Finally, a Mexican stood on the podium in Mexico. With 4 more races to go, the exhilarating sport is bound to get faster, tenser, and a whole lot messier. What were your favorite moments from the races? Let us know in the comments below.